4-year investigation, the special counsel John Durham delivered a blistering report accusing the FBI of hastily initiating an investigation into the 2026 Trump campaign's alleged collusion with Russia without any substantial evidence.
Shocking revelations have shaken the political world. Donald Trump has exposed startling truths about who's really pulling the strings behind closed doors. This isn't just another political drama. This is a web of power plays, conspiracies, and deceit that rocked the nation's core. Let us uncover the explosive details that will forever alter how we see the corridors of power. And what comes next might just rewrite history. A political power play. There's a plan hatched. Let's call it the Clinton strategy. The idea? Frame Donald Trump as being in cahoots with Russia. Sounds wild, right? The story goes that Russia leaked emails from the Democratic National Committee to help Trump win the election. And here's the kicker. Some of the info about this plan came from Russia itself, but it also got passed around by high-ranking US officials. Confused? Hang tight. But here's the twist. A single explosive detail could rewrite everything, and it's still hidden, waiting to be revealed. John Brennan, who was in charge of the CIA back then, reportedly briefed President Obama and his inner circle about this so-called Clinton strategy. The intel supposedly claimed that Hillary Clinton's team wanted to pin the blame for the email leaks on Trump and Russia. That way, the narrative wasn't just about stolen emails, it was about a foreign conspiracy. And, of course, the story was juicy enough to shake up the whole political scene. Fast forward, and a guy named John Durham, a prosecutor with a long resume, is put on the case to figure out where all these wild Russia accusations really came from. Turns out, when Durham started showing evidence of this Clinton strategy to FBI agents, they were stunned. Some were genuinely angry that key pieces of intel were kept from them while they were investigating Trump and his alleged Russia connections. These weren't big-shot bosses, just regular agents doing their jobs. And they were not happy about being left in the dark. The dossier also dragged in other names, accusing Trump's campaign manager and advisors of being Russian agents. The whole thing read like a spy thriller, complete with secret meetings and coded messages. But when experts started digging, they found that a lot of the dossier's claims were based on public information or outright fiction. This wasn't just a small-time rumor mill, though. Big players were involved. Clinton's team hired a law firm called Perkins Coie, who brought in opposition researchers and tech experts. These folks cooked up stories about Trump's connections to a Russian bank and even claimed his server was taking secret orders from Moscow. Again, none of it held water, but it didn't stop the media frenzy. Meanwhile, the FBI launched an investigation, codenamed Crossfire Hurricane, into Trump's ties to Russia. But here's the thing, even before the investigation officially kicked off, cybersecurity experts were poking holes in the theory that Russia was behind the DNC hack. One expert even said it was impossible to know for sure who hacked the servers, especially with how easy it is to leave fake clues. But the circus kept rolling. Media outlets ran with the Russia-Trump conspiracy, treating the dossier like gospel. People were glued to their TVs and smartphones, following every twist and turn. It became the biggest political soap opera of the decade, fueling endless debates, hashtags, and conspiracy theories. At the heart of it all, though, was a simple truth. A lot of powerful people were playing a high-stakes game, using leaks, dossiers, and media spin to shape public opinion. And whether you believed the accusations or not, there's no denying that it left a lasting mark on how people see politics, the media, and even each other. In the end, the whole saga was less about who was actually guilty, and more about how easily a story, true or not, can snowball into something massive. And for anyone watching, it was a reminder that in politics, the truth can often take a back seat to the narrative. Now, let's dig a little deeper into how this unfolded. When the Democratic National Committee emails leaked, it wasn't just embarrassing, it was a full-blown crisis. The leaks revealed internal strategies, showing how the DNC favored Clinton over Bernie Sanders. Supporters of Sanders were outraged, and the Clinton campaign needed a way to shift the narrative. Enter the idea of blaming Russia. Not only did it divert attention, but it also painted Trump as part of a grand conspiracy. The The Clinton team enlisted the help of tech experts and legal consultants to build their case. Perkins Coie, the law firm they hired, brought in cybersecurity firms to investigate the DNC hack. One of those firms, CrowdStrike, claimed that Russia was behind the breach. But this conclusion was based on circumstantial evidence, not concrete proof. Cybersecurity experts pointed out that attributing a hack to a specific actor is incredibly difficult, especially when skilled hackers can easily cover their tracks. At the same time, Fusion GPS, another firm hired by Clinton's team, was digging up dirt on Trump. Fusion GPS brought in Christopher Steele, who compiled the now infamous dossier. Steele's work was funded by the Clinton campaign and the Democratic National Committee, a fact that wasn't widely known at the time. The dossier was a collection of memos filled with sensational claims about Trump's ties to Russia. It alleged that Trump had been compromised by Russian intelligence and was being blackmailed into cooperating with the Kremlin. The dossier also included claims about Trump's campaign staff. Paul Manafort, Trump's campaign manager, was accused of working closely with Russian operatives. Carter Page, another campaign advisor, was painted as a go-between for Trump and the Kremlin. These claims were enough to spark interest from the FBI, which began investigating Trump's campaign for potential collusion with Russia. Meanwhile, media outlets were running with the story. BuzzFeed published the full dossier, even though it was unverified. This move gave the dossier a level of legitimacy, and other news outlets followed suit. Headlines about Trump and Russia dominated the news cycle, creating a narrative that was hard to ignore. The dossier became a key piece of evidence in the FBI's investigation, even though much of it was later debunked. What if one email leak changed everything? Let's dive into how it all began. The dossier that shook Washington. The misuse of intelligence to advance political agendas undermines public trust and weakens democratic institutions. And as the story of the Clinton plan and the Russia investigation unfolds, it serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of allowing political considerations to overshadow the pursuit of truth. The lessons learned from this episode will hopefully guide future leaders in navigating the complex and often murky world of intelligence and politics. Imagine a story where a high-stakes game unravels behind the scenes, and suddenly, someone flips the board, exposing all the hidden cards. That's pretty much what happened when whispers of a deep state began circulating, and a certain someone stepped up to air it all out. No need for dramatic spy novels here. This was a real-life unraveling. Let's talk about computers first. Turns out there's a group, the National Security Agency, or NSA for short. That's like the wizards of the internet. If someone hacks into a computer, these folks can figure out who did it with 100% certainty. They don't guess. They rewind the digital world and follow the trail. Imagine being able to watch every online move anyone ever made. That's their level of skill. And yet, there were claims flying around that Russia was behind some big hacks. Experts stepped up to say, these claims are hot air. In other words, some folks were pointing fingers without solid proof. Now, let's rewind a bit to a time before an investigation called Crossfire Hurricane, a fancy name for a deep dive into election meddling. Before that even kicked off, people were already throwing out wild theories. One of the juiciest? A story about Trump supposedly having a secret computer server linked to a Russian bank. The claim was that this server was like a hotline for taking secret orders from Russia. Sounds straight out of a spy movie, right? Well, spoiler alert, it was completely fake. The whole story, cooked up by a tech team and passed around like gossip at a lunch table, didn't hold up under scrutiny. But wait, there's more. The same group spinning the secret server story had their hands in other wild tales too. They pushed the idea of Russian traffic hoaxes, used phones tied to Russian brands as a prop, and more. And guess who was funding some of this? A law firm called Perkins Coie. They brought in tech experts and another group called Fusion GPS to dig up dirt. Fusion GPS is basically a company that specializes in opposition research, fancy talk for finding dirt on political opponents. Their leader, a guy named Glenn Simpson, teamed up with Christopher Steele, a former British intelligence officer. Steele's job? Write a dossier. And oh boy, what a dossier it was. It painted Trump as a puppet of Vladimir Putin, groomed for years to be a compromised president. If that sounds like a movie plot, it's because it was. Almost. Ever heard of The Manchurian Candidate? Same vibes, minus the hypnosis. Steele's report claimed all kinds of outlandish things, including secret tapes that didn't exist and elaborate plots that fell apart when closely examined. Here's where it gets even messier. Steele didn't write his report alone. He had help from some interesting characters introduced by a woman named Fiona Hill, a Russia expert who'd worked in high places. These helpers were like ghostwriters for conspiracy theories, feeding Steele questionable information that he then turned into the now infamous dossier. All of this was happening against a backdrop of political chaos. There were powerful players, private investigators, and tech geeks all spinning stories and digging for scandals. On the surface, it looked like serious detective work. Underneath, it was more like a tangled web of half-truths, guesswork, and outright fabrications. One of the most shocking parts? The dossier's claims were taken seriously by some, despite glaring holes in its credibility. And it wasn't just the dossier. The whole idea of Trump being a secret agent under Russia's thumb gained traction in certain circles. People wanted to believe it, maybe because it was just too wild not to. But as time went on, cracks started to show. Investigations revealed inconsistencies, and key pieces of evidence were debunked. This wasn't just about Trump, though. It was about how stories get made and spread. It was about how easy it is to spin a narrative when people are ready to believe the worst about someone. And it was about the power of certain institutions to control the flow of information. The players in this story were not your everyday folks. Think about people with deep pockets, powerful connections, and a knack for stirring the pot. Perkins Coie, a law firm with a reputation for being knee-deep in political cases, brought together a team to craft these narratives. And it wasn't just about crafting. They were looking for dirt, digging through anything that could stick to their target. Fusion GPS was one of the tools in their arsenal, a group of investigative specialists who could turn a whisper into a roar. They were hired to look into Trump, and they did, but with methods that raised a lot of eyebrows. Simpson, the head of Fusion GPS, didn't hold back when it came to digging deep. He roped in Christopher Steele, who had years of experience in intelligence work. Steele's job was to compile information into a report that could cast Trump in a questionable light. And the result? A document filled with claims so wild they could have been lifted straight out of a political thriller. From secret meetings to salacious activities, the dossier had it all. But as captivating as it was, many of its claims fell apart under scrutiny. More pieces of the puzzle were falling into place. But not everything was as it seemed. Myth or reality? Steele relied on a network of sources, many of whom were far from reliable. Some were distant contacts from his days in Russia, while others were introduced to him through intermediaries. Fiona Hill, for instance, connected him to Danchenko and Dolan, two individuals who played significant roles in shaping the information in the dossier. These sources, however, had their own agendas and biases, making the information they provided less than trustworthy. The dossier became a lightning rod in political discourse. Supporters of the claims pointed to it as evidence of a massive conspiracy, while critics highlighted its flaws and inconsistencies. It was clear that the document was as much a product of political motivations as it was of investigative work. The lines between fact and fiction blurred, leaving the public to sift through the noise. But the dossier was just one piece of the puzzle. Other narratives were being spun simultaneously, each with its own set of players and motivations. The story of the secret server, for instance, captured imaginations, but was quickly debunked. The tale of the Yodaphones, Russian-brand cell phones supposedly used for nefarious purposes, was another dead end. These stories, while sensational, lacked the substance needed to hold up under scrutiny. As the dust began to settle, it became apparent that many of these narratives were part of a broader strategy. The goal wasn't necessarily to uncover the truth, but to control the narrative. By flooding the media with allegations, true or false, the players behind these stories could shape public perception and sway opinions. It was a game of influence, played at the highest levels. The fallout from these revelations was significant. Trust in institutions, already fragile, took another hit. People began to question the motives behind investigations and the credibility of those leading them. The term deep state became a catch-all for the unseen forces believed to be pulling the strings, a convenient scapegoat for a complex web of actions and reactions. For those who believed in the deep state, these events were proof of its existence. They saw a coordinated effort to undermine a sitting president, driven by political and ideological motivations. Critics, on the other hand, argued that the deep state was a myth, a distraction from the real issues at hand. Regardless of where one stood, it was clear that these events had left a lasting mark on the political landscape. Looking back, it's easy to see how these narratives gained traction. They played into existing fears and suspicions, amplifying doubts and fueling divisions. The power of a well-crafted story, especially one that aligns with pre-existing beliefs, cannot be underestimated. And in a world where information spreads at lightning speed, separating fact from fiction becomes increasingly challenging. This saga is a reminder of the importance of critical thinking and media literacy. It's a call to question the sources of information and the motivations behind them. In a landscape where narratives can be weaponized, staying informed and vigilant is more crucial than ever. The deep state may remain a topic of debate, but the lessons from this story are clear. Truth, like politics, is rarely black and white, and understanding the shades of gray is key to navigating the complexities of the modern world. The story doesn't end here. The ripples of these events continue to influence political discourse, shaping the way people view power, influence, and accountability. As new stories emerge and old ones resurface, the need for careful examination and thoughtful analysis remains paramount. In the end, the deep state may be less about a shadowy cabal and more about the interplay of politics, power, and perception. A dynamic as old as civilization itself. Is the deep state a hidden reality or a convenient scapegoat? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more thought-provoking content.